In a dramatic escalation of trade tensions, former US President Donald Trump has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on goods imported from the European Union, claiming that the 27-country bloc was formed to screw the United States. The announcement, made during his first cabinet meeting since returning to office, has sent shockwaves through global markets and drawn a swift and defiant response from the EU, which has vowed to retaliate firmly and immediately against what it calls unjustified trade barriers. The move marks the latest chapter in Trump's long-standing campaign to reshape global trade dynamics in favor of the United States, often at the expense of its closest allies. The EU, the US's third-largest trading partner after China and Canada, has signaled that it will not back down, setting the stage for a potentially devastating trade war that could have far-reaching consequences for the global economy. Trump's tariff threat, a new front in the trade. While speaking at the White House on Wednesday, Trump announced that his administration would soon release details of the proposed tariffs, which would apply broadly to European imports, including cars and other goods. We have made a decision and will be announcing it very soon. It'll be 25%, he said, without providing a specific timeline. And that'll be on cars and all other things. The announcement comes just days after Trump revealed plans to impose similar tariffs on Canada and Mexico, the US's two largest trading partners. The move has raised concerns that the US is preparing to wage a multi-front trade war, even as it continues to grapple with economic tensions with China. Trump's latest tariff threat is rooted in his belief that the EU has long taken advantage of the United States in trade. The European Union was formed to screw the United States, he declared during the cabinet meeting. They've been doing it for years, and it's time we put a stop to it. The EU, however, has rejected this characterization, arguing that its trade policies are fair and mutually beneficial. A spokesperson for the European Commission responded to Trump's comments by stating, "The EU will react firmly and immediately against unjustified barriers to free and fair trade, including when tariffs are used to challenge legal and non-discriminatory policies. The EU will always protect European businesses, workers, and consumers from unjustified tariffs." EU prepares to retaliate. The EU has made it clear that it will not take Trump's threats lying down. According to Bloomberg, the proposed tariffs could affect as much as $29.3 billion, $28 billion of the bloc's exports to the US, with the automotive industry likely to bear the brunt of the impact. In response, the EU has pledged to retaliate immediately if the US follows through on its threat. The EU sees no justification for the imposition of tariffs on its exports. The bloc's executive body said earlier this month, "We will react to protect the interests of European businesses, workers, and consumers from unjustified measures." The EU's response could include targeted tariffs on US goods, as well as legal challenges through the World Trade Organization, WTO. European leaders have also signaled that they are prepared to work with other countries to counter what they see as Trump's protectionist agenda. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, a prominent voice within the EU, has called for unity in the face of Trump's threats. The EU should do all it can to avoid totally unnecessary and stupid tariff wars. Tusk said, "We must stand together to defend our interests and uphold the principles of free and fair trade." Macron's failed diplomacy. The timing of Trump's announcement is particularly striking, coming just days after French President Emmanuel Macron met with Trump in Washington in an attempt to diffuse tensions between the US and the EU. Macron, who has positioned himself as a key intermediary between Trump and European leaders, had expressed confidence that he had persuaded Trump to avoid a trade dispute with the EU and focus instead on his dealings with China. Come on, you cannot have a trade war with China and Europe at the same time, Macron told Fox News after the meeting. I hope I convinced him. However, Trump's latest comments suggest that Macron's efforts may have been in vain. The French president's failure to sway Trump underscores the challenges European leaders face in dealing with a US administration that has repeatedly prioritized unilateral action over multilateral economic fallout. Who stands to lose? Trump's tariff threats have drawn sharp criticism from economists and business leaders, who warn that the move could backfire, harming the US economy as much as its trading partners. The Wall Street Journal, a traditionally conservative publication, recently published an editorial arguing that Trump's tariffs on Canada and Mexico would hurt American consumers and businesses by driving up prices and disrupting supply chains. The tariffs will drive massive amounts of auto manufacturing to Michigan, a state which I just easily won 6 in the presidential election, Trump wrote on Truth Social, his social media platform. In response to the editorial, he dismissed the criticism as so wrong, insisting that the tariffs would benefit American workers and industries. However, many experts disagree. They argue that tariffs on European goods, particularly cars, would lead to higher prices for American consumers and could trigger a wave of retaliatory measures that would hurt US exporters. The automotive industry, which relies heavily on global supply chains, would be especially vulnerable. This is a dangerous game Trump is playing, said John Smith, an economist at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. Tariffs on the EU would not only hurt European businesses, but also American workers and consumers. It's a lose-lose situation. A history of trade. Tensions. Trump's latest move is part of a broader pattern of trade aggression that has defined his political career. During his first term in office, Trump imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from the EU, Canada, and Mexico, citing national security concerns. He also launched a trade war with China, imposing billions of dollars in tariffs on Chinese goods. While Trump has often claimed that his trade policies are designed to protect American workers and industries, critics argue that they have done more harm than good. According to a study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, the tariffs imposed during Trump's first term cost the US economy an estimated $1.4 billion per month in lost efficiency and higher prices. Despite these criticisms, Trump has remained steadfast in his belief that tariffs are an effective tool for reshaping global trade in America's favor. We're going to make sure that the United States is treated fairly, he said during Wednesday's cabinet meeting. If that means imposing tariffs, then so be it. Global implications. The prospect of a US-EU trade war has sent ripples through the global economy, with markets reacting nervously to the news. The euro fell against the dollar following Trump's announcement, while European stock markets experienced a sharp sell-off. The situation is further complicated by the ongoing tensions between the US and China, which have yet to resolve their long-standing trade disputes. If Trump follows through on his threat to impose tariffs on the EU, it could create a perfect storm of economic uncertainty, with far-reaching implications for global growth. The world is already dealing with enough economic challenges, said Christine Lagarde, president of the European Central Bank. A trade war between the US and the EU would only make things worse. We urge all parties to exercise restraint and work towards a peaceful resolution. What's next? As the US and the EU brace for a potential trade war, the question on everyone's mind is, what happens next? Trump's announcement has set the stage for a high-stakes showdown, with both sides digging in their heels. For the EU, the priority will be to protect its economic interests while avoiding an all-out trade war. This could involve a combination of targeted tariffs, legal challenges, and diplomatic efforts to rally international support against Trump's policies. For Trump, the challenge will be to deliver on his promises without causing undue harm to the US economy. While he has framed his tariff threats as a way to protect American workers, the reality is that tariffs are a blunt instrument that often have unintended consequences. As the situation continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the world is watching. The outcome of this latest trade dispute could have profound implications, not only for the US and the EU, but for the global economy as a whole. In the words of Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, this is a moment of truth for the international community. We must choose between cooperation and conflict, between progress and regression. The stakes could not be higher.